Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. We are here another week of the off season and another casting draft. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good. Another week, another draft, another podcast. I'm hoping we get season 41 news soon. I mean, I enjoy doing the casting drafts, and I look forward to doing other types of off-season content. Let's go, as A. Heffler says in the chat. But I do hope we get actual concrete news about season 41, about when it's happening or what the theme is, so we have more types of things to discuss. I know other shows like Big Brother are going to be happening right now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're gonna keep doing these as long as the off season goes. We don't really know what we're doing next week, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, we'll try and keep this off season content coming weekly, and up until we start getting news about season 41, which hopefully happens sooner rather than later. So you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, but until then, we have our next draft tonight, and I think it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, dominant duos is tonight. I know that this has been an idea we've been throwing around since we first started doing casting drafts a few weeks ago, and I'm really excited for this one. We talk about doing rivals or duos. We thought that it was more realistic for duos to happen because we think that people who are friends would be more likely to play the game together than people who are rivals. Just pretty much common sense there. But, look, rivals draft is something we could do in the future, but we're starting with duos here.
Yeah, I think rivals would make for better TV, honestly, just because of the clashing. But I think if you realistically ask me, would Corinne decide to come back if Sugar was there? Or would Randy come back if he saw Sugar? It's like, I don't think that would happen. Or if Janet came back and saw, not Janet, but someone from, I guess like Missy and Karishma, for example. Like, I think if you're somebody people who butted heads, I don't think they would agree to come back. So I think duos is more realistic. And I think it's still a fun idea, like you mentioned, how duos kind of make the game in terms of them being a dominant pair, them being an underdog duo, or them just being fun characters to watch in tandem. So I think they really do make the show from a character, but also a strategy perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really excited for this one, and I'll explain a little bit how it works. So our vision for a duo season would be somewhat like Blood and Water, where each member of the duo would be split up between tribes. So one member of the alliance would be on one tribe, the other member of the alliance would be on the other side. And then, it would kind of work like a Blood Water season, but I think that now that we're a little bit later into Survivor and we're going into season 41, and we've seen, so many different twists, I think that possibly something like, going into each other's camps to meet up at night could be some kind of an advantage. So maybe meeting up at night to get an advantage between the duos. We just think that, this season would work like a Blood Water, except for there'd be a lot of opportunities to, bond and form and continue your duo or continue your alliance or continue your relationship with that person you're playing with, even though that they're on separate tribes. So, right. Some kind of advantage based season like that. Maybe there would be a separate island where members of the duo could meet up or something like that. But anyway, how we're going to do it so that there's an equal amount of, man-woman duos, woman-woman duos, man-man duos. We're going to have 3 woman-man, 3 man-man, 3 woman-woman, and then 1 wild card. So whatever we decide from there, and obviously we'll make sure that it's like normal, 10 men and 10 women on this cast of 20.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just to add really quickly to your strategy points, I think that there's a really cool concept here where Blood versus Water, the first season was 1 returnee and 1 newbie, and then the second one was newbie. So there wasn't really a lot of skin in the game where they're all returning players where you have a connection on the other side. And I feel like it'd be interesting where we're seeing all returnees here. How would the strategy really play out where it's like, okay, do we vote out this person to weaken them because their ally is on the other side and we fear them linking up together? Or they're a strong 2 that we want to work with. If we get 2 and 2, we get 4. If we already have a 4 in our tribe, we now have a 6. I think there's actually a lot of different ways the numbers and strategy can fall out here. I think it's really cool to see if people go for people or they bring them into their fold. And also now that we're in the era of fire tokens, we could see a whole new modern Lex and Rob of, hey, if you help him, if you save her, I'll help you out. It's like, hey, if you save my pair, you save my ally here, I'll give you a fire token. There's a lot of cool modern strategy that could happen with this.
And at the end of the day, Survivor is an individual game. So I think it'd be interesting to see how long a lot of these people would want to keep their pair in the game. Maybe if you make it to the merge and then vote out your other member of your pair, of your duo right away, maybe that's an advantage for you because people will see you as less of a threat. So I don't know. I think that there would be a lot of layers of strategy to go with this, but I'm really excited to get started.
Let's do it.
All right. I'll give you the first pick since I had it last time.
Okay, sure. All right. I will go with Denise and Malcolm. I think that essentially they are a pair that you think of when you think of a dynamic duo, or you think of a really dominant twosome in the game. You think of them mainly because of their story. They are a tried and true underdog story. And we always talk about, the intentional Mat Singh, where if you have a tribe like Mat Singh or like the Brains tribe in Cagayan, you start down in the numbers. Yes, you go to more tribals, but you kind of become a hot commodity at the swap and the merge because you could be picked up by other alliances that haven't gone to tribal. And they say, we're itching to make a move. We're itching to get this person out. I want to bring you into the fold. I think that's a great place to be. So people always say you don't want to throw challenges, but maybe the intentional Mat Singh is a good strategy in the end. But Denise and Malcolm have it all. They have the social element. They have the strategic. They have the physical. Honestly, if you survive Mat Singh, you can survive anything, honestly. They solidified a Final Four with Lisa and you-know-who, and they made it to the end. And I think that either one, if they were there, obviously Denise wins Philippines, but if Malcolm's there, I think he wins Philippines. And they didn't really even turn on each other until they had to. So I think this is a great way to start off dominant duos.
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest duos ever to play the game. You have Malcolm. He's already played 3 times. And I'm sure that we don't want to see his Survivor journey end on the way he went out in Game Changers. You have Denise, who played a really solid game in Winners at War to follow up her win in Philippines. Obviously had a huge move in the game where she takes out Sandra, slays the queen. I'm a big fan of both Denise and Malcolm, so I'm in full support of them being on the season. And one thing I did realize is that normally I always have our names up here on the as the tribes, because that's it shows who's which team is who's drafting who and stuff like that for each team. And then I realized that we're gonna end up where that we're splitting them up between tribes, but we'll still name the Dylan tribe and the Ryan tribe in honor of us. So
yeah, listen, I will. I was gonna say that I'm happy to be blue, but I need to think about statistically which tribe color does the best. I think purple has the most wins because usually orange loses the most. But I'm happy to be blue. Blue's my favorite color. So
all right. So for the next pick, I'm gonna have to go with the best duo ever to play the game, Cops Are Us, Tony and Sarah. I think that this is an obvious choice for a season like this. And I think that, look, will Tony and Sarah ever play the game again? Either one of them? I'm not ruling it out. Do I think it's likely? Probably not. If they have a legend season, is it possible? Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, again, Tony and Sarah, the 3 times that they've played each, they've played together all 3 times, and they're undefeated in those seasons. Tony won Cagayan, Sarah won Game Changers, and Tony won Winners at War. It's truly the best bonds, the best alliance that we have seen in Survivor. We all saw how emotional the Final Four fire making was at Winners at War. We spoke about this so many different times. I'm not sure we need to go over it all over again. But if Tony and Sarah were going to be on Survivor again, it would feel weird if one was on and not the other. So why not have a duo season and have them on? Looks like we have a Ryan. You just froze for a second.
I'm here.
All right, cool.
Yeah, honestly, with the recent hurricane and the power outages in the Northeast, there might be some potential tech issues tonight, but we'll try to push through as best we can. No, I heard everything you said, and I totally agree. Cops Are Us, like we always mention, an iconic duo in terms of a storyline and in terms of players themselves. They're both legends in their own right, of course. And even though they played over 3 seasons, it really is a 2-season arc because they really didn't play together in Game Changers after Tony goes out early. So it really is a story of Cagayan and then Winners at War. But I really think that they both play very similar. I think Tony played a dominant crazy game in Cagayan. Sarah models it really in Game Changers and plays a great game. And then they come back together and they go to the end. And it's crazy to think how no one saw this pair coming because they are friends in real life. So they must have downplayed this a lot. They must have planted seeds of doubt, but they managed to make it through and they were never really even targeted. Tony's name really never even came up in the pre-merge. I think Sarah's name only came up when Boston Rob threw a vote her way, but she was never in danger. So the fact that these two winners, not just a duo, but these two winners can make it to the end at Winners at War speaks to how strong their pair is and how great of players they are.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And if there were to do a season again, they should be locks, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll just go in order, and I'll go with our last man-woman pair until possibly the wild card spot. I'm going to take Amanda and Todd here from Survivor China. So I think, it seems like we have Amanda on a cast every single week, and I know we spoke about her a ton. We both think highly of her. Obviously, got to the end 2 times in a row playing seasons 15 and 16, and again, was really, really good in season 20 when we went on Russell's show to talk to him and do our Ultimate Survivor bracket. He had said that he feared Amanda the most in Heroes Villains, which was really interesting to hear from a player like Russell, who, you wouldn't think Russell really fears anybody, but he said that Amanda had, possibly the best grip on the game out of anybody there. Obviously really, really smart. And again, like I said, we spoke about Amanda so many times, but somebody that we have not had on a draft yet is Todd. Somebody who I think would have been really, really interesting to see on Winners at War. Todd had one of the best wins ever, in my opinion. He completely dominated the game, and he was never really in too much danger of going home. And, ends up getting the votes at the end over Courtney and Amanda and ends up winning. And so a winner that we haven't seen back. I know he had a lot of personal issues, and that could be a reason why we haven't seen him back. But, from what I've seen, it seems like he's doing a lot better now. So, and I saw an AMA with him on Survivor Reddit. I'm not sure how recently it was or if I saw it way back, but I know that he said that he would have loved to have played on an all-winner season as Survivor. So clearly he was not asked. But I do think it would be really interesting to have him back in a future season.
Yeah, I can't obviously cite for sure whether anything personal that happened with Todd was the reason why he hasn't been back yet. Probably is, or why he wasn't on Winners at War. But I would have loved to see Todd Herzog back. Todd is one of my favorite winners. China's one of my favorite seasons. I think the way he and Amanda maneuvered through that game, kind of taking control of Fei Long and never really being in danger themselves. And the minute that someone, John Robert, catches on to Todd's game and Amanda's game, Todd's like, well, you got to go. So they really navigated through the game, taking out any perceived threat in their path. Obviously, John Robert, also James. And then I think PG was their last main hurdle in the game to get through. I respect them a lot for sticking together because one of them could have easily said, hey, Amanda, you're a threat. Hey, Todd, you're a threat, and gun for each other. But they stayed strong to the end together. And it actually was amazing with how strong Amanda played that she got no votes in China, whereas Todd got the 4 votes to win and Courtney got 2.
Well, I think Amanda got 1, actually.
Yeah, sorry. She got Eric's vote. Yes, it was 4-2-1 votes. But I think then obviously Amanda's prowess was seen more and her game was respected more in Micronesia. And then, of course, Amanda plays again for a 3rd time in Heroes versus Villains. So I would always be down for another Amanda run at the game, and I would love to see Todd come back in some capacity.
Yeah, again, I think Todd would have fared really, really well in Winners at War. I actually don't think he would have been, seen as a threat pretty much at all because first of all, it's been so long since he played, and he's not like a physical threat. He wouldn't jump out at you as that. So I think he definitely could have flown under the radar and had a lot of control in the game. Definitely a very, very new school player that was in an old school age.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, all right, your pick now. I just went 2 in a row, so I don't know why I went to, I don't know why I went 2 in a row. I was not thinking, but
listen, we're going with the flow. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're going with the flow. So I'll give you the first man. I guess we'll do 2 men picks now. So we'll go man duo. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do 3 men's duos in a row. Then we'll do our 3 women's duos, and then end with a random pick.
Yep.
Okay. So for the 2 women's duos, I'll take Courtney and Sandra from obviously Heroes versus Villains, or as they called themselves, Rice and Beans. It's a nickname that I don't see mentioned often, but that was a great pairing. I think one of the funniest pairings. I know we always say, oh, Courtney's hysterical. Oh, Christian's hysterical. Oh, James is hysterical. But who's the funniest duo in history? And I think Courtney and Sandra, they had a lot of fun. And I think when we're talking about dynamic duos and dominant duos, you could say an underdog like Denise and Malcolm, or a dominant pair like Tony and Sarah. But I think Courtney and Sandra had the most fun. Also, in addition to Todd, I think this is Sandra's first time in one of our drafts as well, actually. But I think they had the most fun because they knew that they weren't big like threats or big movers and shakers in the game. They were kind of there because of their social game. And obviously Sandra was a previous winner. Courtney was a previous finalist. And they always were the ones, whenever Jeff said villains, you have two extra people, who are you sitting out? Obviously Courtney and Sandra always sit out. And I think they had fun with that. Again, Rice and Beans were laughing on the sidelines. Courtney was laughing when Sandra had that famous face plant into the sand. And to give them credit, Sandra actually saves Courtney at the coach vote when Russell wants to take them out, and Sandra puts the bug in coach's ear, in Russell's ear, that coach wants to take him out, and she saves Courtney there. And we always talk about, again, rewriting history. What happens if Sandra goes out pre-merge instead of Courtney? So I think this is a really fun duo that I would love to see again, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I don't want to say an underrated duo because Sandra does end up winning the game, but based on other duos that we saw that season, maybe it is a little bit underrated. And in the scheme of things, maybe not a duo that comes to mind right away, but definitely a fun duo. So I'd love to see that again. Anyway, I will continue on the woman trend, and I will take Kelly and Lauren from Survivor: Edge of Extinction. So this was definitely an interesting. This is definitely an interesting duo for sure. Obviously in season 38, a captain season, Kelly Wentworth, one of the four captains back, immediately pairs up with Lauren at the beginning of the game, and they did make it, pretty far together until Wentworth does get voted out 10th, where War Dog does decide he's going to blindside Kelly pretty much for no reason, and it ends up getting him voted out. But I mean, I just think that Kelly and Lauren really, played the game together well. They had a pretty good grasp of what was going on, even though Kelly was in trouble a ton. And I think Lauren is a player that I think Survivor will bring back. If I had to guess, she had a huge fan base when she did play that season. And I think that I don't think Kelly Wentworth is looking to play again, but if she had the opportunity to play with Lauren in a duo season, that could change her mind.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool duo because I think obviously we've seen Kelly play without Lauren, and obviously we know how great and capable Kelly Wentworth is as a player. And we then saw Lauren and Kelly play the game together, and they proved to be pretty effective, even though their tribe was a bit unfortunate with the challenges. But then we see Kelly go out, and we see Lauren play pretty well herself. She plays pretty well up until Chris comes back from EOE, and we see that she is a capable player in her own right. And I would love to see Lauren back in some way. Of course, she kind of messes up with EOE when Chris comes back, and she gives him her idol. And then she unfortunately finds Rick Devon's fake idol. But I think this is an interesting duo because they've proven that they can play, in a sense, by themselves, but also together. And if they came back in a duo season, it'd be really interesting to see if these tribes want to pull in Kelly and Lauren because they're a solid duo number, or if they want to take one of them out.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point that we have seen both play alone. I know that, Kelly had a two seasons on her own. Before this, Lauren had not. She's only played one season. But like you said, there was a span of time where Lauren was in the game without Kelly. So we did, see her play without her. I think that Lauren was definitely somebody who was kind of screwed by Edge of Extinction just because of everything that happened with Chris. Obviously it was her decision to give the idol to Chris, something that she should not have done, but I would like to see her play again. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, listen, it was a match made in heaven when the new players are on the boat, and then Jeff says, we're going to bring back 4 players to play with you, and then Lauren's giving that confessional saying, oh, Kelly's one of my favorite players, and then Kelly shows up on the boat. So it was a match made in heaven for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's also pretty cool to have your one-time players in a cast with players who are, seasoned vets as I would
Oh
call
my God.
it.
I mean, speaking of duos, though, Dylan, could you imagine if you showed up to a season and I would want to play on an all new player season. I wouldn't want to be mixed with vets. I think it's just way too. One, I don't think it's fun to watch, but I think two, it's just tough to play because I want to work with them, but I want to take them out. But look, if I showed up to the mat and I get to see Rob Cesternino or Sari or one of those players, I would lose my mind completely.
All right. Your pick.
Right. So we have one more female pick, at least for this round. They might show up in the random, but one last for now. Let's see. I'll go old school because I feel like we always tend to draft some new school so far. So I'll go Jenna and Heidi from Amazon. I think that this is a pair kind of like Sandra and Courtney where they weren't big movers and shakers in the game, or they weren't great strategists because Rob Cesternino was obviously running the season. But I think, Dylan, to your earlier point where Russell says Amanda was someone to be feared, Rob said all the time, both on the show and also after the show, that Heidi was somebody that he really, was fearful of because Heidi was obviously a really great social player. She actually, if not for like a knee injury, she was great physically. She's an athlete. And as they mentioned at the finale, Dylan, out of all 16 players on Amazon, Heidi ends up being the one with the fourth highest IQ. Heidi's pretty smart as well. So Rob was the only one that gave her due credit and said, I'm kind of fearful of Heidi. So I think Heidi's a capable player. I would love to see her come back. I think now that she's busy with all of her, she has a lot of different humanitarian projects happening in a lot of different companies that she runs, and she's married to Cole Hamill. So Heidi's doing well for herself. I don't think she'll come back, but I would love to see another Heidi return. As for Jenna, you can make the argument she never got a real return to the game after she left in All-Stars when her mom was in the hospital. So I also would like to see maybe Jenna for a second time too.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jenna, another former winner on this cast, somebody who the last time we saw her play, she had to leave because of her mom was sick. So, I mean, basically you're getting two more one-time players in this cast and two more old schoolers. So I really like the pick there.
Yeah.
All right. So, I guess I'm going to move to male now. I'm going to go with Dom and Wendell. I think that everyone who's watching this expected that Dom and Wendell would appear on this cast. Look, you could make an argument that Dom and Wendell are the second best duo ever to play the game behind Tony and Sarah. I mean, both players, they both were incredible. Like Wendell was an amazing winner, and Dom played an amazing runner-up game and easily could have been deserving as well. I know, but we spoke about that a lot of different times. Basically they come together right at the beginning of the game and they pretty much carry that all the way through. And they were just completely dominant in Ghost Island. And once Chris Noble was gone, they really had nothing to fear at all. And, look, I'm sure Dom might be kicking himself for not taking on Wendell and Fire, but, Wendell does come out with a win. It was a tie vote. Laurel ends up giving Wendell the win with the extra vote. And then Wendell comes back on Winners at War and gets somewhat of definitely gets a villain edit, something that I don't think he necessarily deserved at all. I think it was just convenient for the producers. So I would also hate to see Wendell end on a note like that. I would love to see him back. And, we spoke about how much we want to see Dom back. So I think everyone knows that at this point.
This is, I think, other than, Denise and Malcolm or Tony and Sarah, I think this is easily, again, one of the best duos we've seen, but one of the most interesting stories. I think it's so, like again, if you had to do a deep dive and reanalyze Ghost Island, which I feel like I might do because I think Ghost Island gets a bad rap for how predictable it became, like you said, after Chris Noble left. But I think their story is one that's very interesting. For one, they're very balanced. It's a very balanced team where they do have the social element, they do have the physical, and they do have the mental and the strategic. They also had a firm loyalty to each other, and they were really dominant in the game, and they really never struggled after that Chris Noble vote. And I think the key element here is that they never really wanted to pull the trigger. I mean, maybe they wanted to pull the trigger, but they couldn't, because if you're Wendell and you take Dom out at 8, you're probably the next biggest threat on the chessboard at 7 and 6. So you can't take him out too early. But if you're Dom and you keep Wendell too late, like what happened, then Wendell can get to the end and squeak out a win. So it's a very interesting story, especially if you remember in the pre-merge, they get blindsided at the Morgan vote, and they are in a bit of a rough spot, but they somehow manage after the next swap to get back into the Navidi majority. I saw Adam mention Navidi strong. How many times did we hear Navidi strong in that season? But we see them get back into the majority, not only because of their Navidi connections, but also because they pull in Jonathan and Laurel as numbers. So their arc is really interesting, where they start at a deficit in a way, but they really come into their own in the majority, and they run the table there. So this just shows if you have that balance of all three elements of the game and you can pull in some outsiders, I think that's a really, really good combination.
Yeah, I mean, completely for sure. And I think that Wendell and Dom would jump on the opportunity if they got an opportunity to play together. So, all right, your turn.
All right, I'll take JT and Steven, which was mentioned in the chat by Solomon. I think this is also when you think of dynamic duos, who do you think of? I think the name that comes to your mind right away is JT and Steven. And again, going back to the story of how a pair starts, this is very compelling, where the very first confessional, where the tribes, Jalapao and Timbira, are taking the huge trek to their camps. I think it was like a 2 to 4 hour trek. And Steven gets a confessional, and he's like, listen, there's a country boy over here, JT. I'm from New York City. I'm not going to blend well with him. His southern ways and my city ways aren't really going to bond. And they form one of the best bromances in Survivor history. Again, like a lot of these pairs, they have all the elements of having a good physical game from JT's side and a good social game from them both. And then Steven brings the strategy, of course. And I think that when you have a very capable duo like that, they become a big threat, especially if you don't detect them and they go unnoticed and then they just run the table on you. And I think that they really do a great job, especially because Jalapao enters the merge, down 4-8, because they had 5 and then, they had 4 and then Joe gets medevac. So it's 3 of them. And I think it's the 6 people on Timbira. And they are in a real big deficit, and they manage to bond with Tyson and Coach, and then they take out Tyson, and then they take out Coach later. They do a great job at infiltrating the majority, and they make it to the end together. It's a really great story as well, but they're also great, capable players.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about dominating the game as a duo, JT and Steven, I mean, they were pretty much perfect at it. And I know that Steven caught a lot of flack at the end from the jury, but Steven easily should have gotten votes at the end, and had he won that season, I'm not sure a lot of people would have been complaining. He was a master strategist. And then you look at JT, who was a amazing social player and also a very good strategist himself. So, and we know that, Stephen Fishback knows Survivor maybe better than anybody knows Survivor. So it's always great to see him on a season.
Yeah, absolutely. And one quick question I want to ask you, sorry, I just had to answer something. Last thing I want to ask you basically is, I think that a good biopic or a good discussion to have would be when these players come back for their second time, how well do they do with or without their duo? Now, Tony and Sarah, I think, are the exception. I mean, Tony's a unicorn. Tony's one of a kind, but they come back and they do a really great job together again. But we see pairs where one comes back without the other, and they don't do as well. And I think that's because there's a lot of magic in a pair because of your connection and because of how well you run the game. And that's one true person for a fact you can rely on. That's the hardest part of Survivor, is who to trust, because anyone can betray you at any time. So essentially, if I have one person I can trust, that's gold in this game, even more than an idol. If you have a known commodity that you can trust. But when you don't have that and you're used to playing with that person and you come back, you're going to struggle a bit. So you mentioned Dom and Wendell. I think we see that Wendell kind of struggled without Dom there. I mean, I think Wendell's a great player, but without Dom's, deep maneuverings and with his own connections, we saw Wendell struggle a bit. And Lord knows when JT has come back without Steven, he has struggled a bit as well. So I think that's a really interesting question when you think about the 10 pairs that we're going to have on our draft and the multitude of pairs that we don't end up picking, but are also great Survivor duos. Think about how they either did well if their pairs came back together, or if they were able to play by themselves and stand on their own as a one player, or if they were floundering because they didn't have that other pair to bounce off of.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point there. Like JT hasn't done well without Steven. Like Wendell did not do well in his time without Dom. I think, it is interesting to see that. And I think like if we were to reunite the pair, would JT be as good as he was in Token Teens? Would Wendell be as good as he was in Ghost Island in a season like this? Interesting. It would be interesting to find out.
And again, let's be fair. I think a big reason of why Wendell struggled, I think, was because of the whole Michelle storyline and we kicked it and the boyfriend-girlfriend factor. I think if he was on a Winners at War season without Michelle or on a different All-Star season without her there, I highly doubt he would have gotten the edit he got. Maybe he would have gotten a bit of a cocky edit when he's talking to Jeff at the challenges, but I don't think it would have been to that degree. But you're right. I think it's interesting to see how people do when they come back without their pair, if they stand on their own or they struggle.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Our last man duo for this draft. So this is a recent duo, one that I think everyone loved to see play. 2 one-time players here. And that is Christian and Davey. So I was considering throwing in Christian and Nick, the Mason-Dixon line, but we just had seen Nick play on Winners at War, and I think that they would rather give the opportunity to a player like Davey when they had just seen Nick play, and they kind of gave Nick a little bit of a goofy edit. And I'm sure I know for a fact from social media and stuff that he was not happy with that. So I don't think we'll be seeing Nick anytime soon. But this was really a trio between Davey, Christian, and Nick. So we're taking 2 from the trio here. We're giving us Christian and Davey, both great players. Christian is one of the best characters we've seen in the entire New School era, in my opinion. And Davey was also phenomenal as well. So, I mean, I think that if we were to get a second chance season, it's possible that we do see both of them back. But for this purpose, let's throw them on duos.
It's a really interesting thing to think about with David versus Goliath, because I think that Mason-Dixon was obviously a solid pair through the pre-merge when Nick went up to him. And I think Nick deserves credit because he kind of takes a big brother approach to the game where you go up to somebody or you go up to a group of people and you name the alliance. It kind of makes it more tangible. It kind of gives it more power. Like, hey, it's not just, oh, I'm aligned with Lauren. Like, we're the rock stars. We're Mason-Dixon. It kind of gives a bit more oomph to it. And I think Nick did that with 3 people. He has, Mason-Dixon. He had the Thoroughbreds with Elizabeth, and then he had the rock stars with Mike. So I give Nick credit for that regard. I know his Winners at War performance was a bit debated, but I think that he gets credit for what he did otherwise with his social game. But anyway, I think it's tough because the post-merge of David versus Goliath really had a lot of moving parts, a lot of voting blocks. You never really knew who was going to stick with who from episode to episode. And I do think Christian and Davey, if they were in the season and they were, marketed as a pair, I think absolutely they would work together. I don't think, they would be gunning for Christian because I don't think Davey would gun for Christian and say, I got to get him out of here because he's his pair. Now, I do think Christian might get voted out on my blue tribe, or maybe Davey would get voted out on the red tribe because we want to weaken Christian. I think that's an interesting way to think about it because, did Davey take Christian out? Was Davey one of the Christian votes, or was that?
I'm actually just looking at this on my phone. When Christian was voted out, Davey voted for Allison.
Yeah, it was Mike and Angelina that did it to Christian, actually. So I think that'd be an interesting pair, especially with how crazy that post-merge was. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not forget that they pulled off one of the greatest moves of the New School era when they had the minority vote split. Christian played the idol, and then Angelina played the idol, but they had thrown 3 votes on John, and he was the one who went home because he was the only one that got votes. So Davey and Christian are ones that could really do a lot of damage in a season like this.
Listen, I love a good minority vote split. I think it was easily a great move and easily a great television moment, again, because we didn't know who was going to go. So I think that really speaks to how they are as players. And I think them coming back would be great.
Yeah. And now moving on to our last two here. I had originally thought that we could do a wild card, meaning like man or man or woman or man woman, but now that I realize it would not work out with the numbers of even men and even women. Because if we did man or woman, we would be at 11-9 either way. So the next one has to be a man and a woman. Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, and it's tough because, and again, I think anyone watching is going to see that we're already at the last pick and we're not even that far in. I think this draft went fast because when you do duos, you cover two people at once, so it makes it go a lot faster, twice as fast actually as it normally would. And if we really had a lot more time, we would dive really deep into each and every person. But it's tough also because now we're at the last pick and I have so many people on my board, and I'm sure when we're done, we'll do really quickly our honorable mentions as well as what you guys in the audience wanted to see on our draft board. But I have at least 10 pairs that didn't get picked that I think would work great on this season. It's tough that we're down to so little. I'm going to go with a underrated pick for the last two, a pair that is underrated because their season's underrated and they don't get mentioned a lot, but I think they were instrumental in the story of their season. And I'm talking about Kenny and Crystal from Gabon. I did want to pick, I saw Becky and Yule mentioned in the chat a couple times, but I think Kenny and Crystal is a pair that you never hear mentioned because Gabon is often a forgotten season. And I think Kenny, if he ever wanted to return, should get the chance because I can't think of a time where somebody was so challenged in terms of Fong being a disaster of a tribe. The Fong tribe was not good. And then he swapped to another bad Fong tribe, which also wasn't good. He and Crystal had a lot of roadblocks in their journey to the end, and they overcame a lot of it. They are a really stealth duo where, they swap tribes, and Kenny and Crystal see, Kelly is a number that is not with Ace and Jackie. And they say, in Survivor, if you can pull over a lone stray vote, you should do it because they will feel indebted to you. And they also add one to your numbers. So they pull in Kelly and they vote out Jackie to take a stab at the Coda majority. And I think that's a great move that he makes in episode 3 or 4. Then they get Sugar to flip on Ace and also Sugar to flip on Charlie at the merge. And then they also get Susie to flip on Marcus right before they merge as well. So they make a lot of big flips happen. And they both do it together and separately. We see times where Kenny and Crystal approach somebody together and they make a flip happen, or they operate separately and then come back and discuss, what their strategy is going to be. And I think they did a really great job. They did not get to the end together, unfortunately. They end up placing in 6th and 5th. But I think if a few different challenges go their way, Crystal Cox is infamously bad at challenges. But I think if a few challenges go their way, I think they could have maybe sat at the end together. And I don't foresee them ever turning on each other. I don't remember a confessional where Kenny said, I want to take out Crystal, or vice versa. So I think this is a really stealth, underrated duo. And that's why I wanted to pick them.
Yeah, definitely underrated. I know that a lot of people want to see Kenny and wanted to see him in Second Chance and would like to see him in a Second Chance season in the future. I know that they just did a Reddit AMA recently, so a lot of people are pushing for them to come back. So
and now Crystal's on Twitter. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. So now we'll talk about the honorable mentions. So first of all, flood the comment section with people that we left out, and we will go over a lot of them right now. Some people that I had on my list that I think would be that should be under consideration if they were this season. I think that Michelle and Julia would be interesting because you have Michelle as a winner and then a finalist, an all-time fan, Michelle, an all-time fan favorite, especially after Winners at War. And then you have Julia, somebody who, was maybe a little bit underrated in Korong. They were, her and Michelle were definitely a tight duo before Michelle did blindside her. And yeah, I think I always think it's interesting to see underrated one-time players come back. So I think that would be interesting. I also had from that same season, Scott and Jason on the list. I know a lot of people don't like them, but they're great villains, and I had a lot of fun watching them. Obviously, if we wanted to go mainstream, Rob and Amber, but I don't think they would ever come. They're not coming back.
Mhm.
at least definitely Amber. So we did not throw them in, but curious to hear what you're thinking as well. Ryan, are you frozen? All right, looks like we have Ryan frozen here. I'm not sure if he could hear me right now. All right, I guess we'll go through while we're waiting on Ryan to come back. I guess we will go through some of the names that people are throwing in here. We have from Solomon, we have Jeremy and Natalie. I think that's definitely an interesting one to consider. Play together on season 29, San Juan del Sur, and they come back in season 40, Winners at War, and unfortunately they're put on the same tribe, which really does hurt Natalie and was a major problem and ends up being the reason why she does go home first. I mean, obviously Jeremy and Natalie were seen as a huge threat, and it was a main reason why Natalie went home. So, I mean, I think that would be definitely a good choice. I know I love Jeremy. A lot of people love Natalie as well. Natalie was great, especially coming back in Winners at War from the edge of extinction, makes it all the way to the end and gets votes and comes in second place. Like, Natalie is a beast. So, I mean, I think people would love to see both of them back. Definitely a good pick here, Solomon. All right. Let's go through some others while we are waiting for Ryan to come back. Looks like Ryan is back. We have Ryan back here.
Yeah, again, apologies for any tech issues tonight with any lag or cutouts. I do think with, again, the hurricane or the storm, a lot of routers and a lot of internet's spotty right now. What did I miss?
Yeah, I was going over, we had Solomon said Jeremy and Natalie is an honorable mention, so I was going over them. Mm-hmm. But moving on to other stuff, I know that Becky and Yule was people that we saw, so you want to go over them?
Yeah, I think Becky and Yule is a great pair, and it's unfortunate because I think Becky is a pretty good player, but she unfortunately will only be remembered for that infamous fire making challenge that went on for an hour or so, and she needed matches to make the fire. And it's unfortunate because I think up until then, Becky was a real important cog in Yule's game, because when Yule came back from exile and found the idol, he told her about it right away. And they made a lot of maneuvers together. And I think, honestly, even though Yule makes that big move at 9 where he gets Penner to flip on Rero and take out Nate, Becky was a big part of that. I remember a couple of confessionals or a couple of discussions where Yule was thinking, how can I use the idol? And Becky was saying, I think we can try to get Jonathan on our side, maybe show him the idol as a sign of trust. And that's always a big debate in Survivor. Steven and Rob always mention that on the know-it-alls, where do you keep an idol to yourself as knowledge, or do you share that idol as a sign of trust? And I think Becky and Yule demonstrated how you can share information and advantages as a sign of trust. I think that's a great pair. I would have loved to have them if I had more room.
Yep, and other pairs we have here. So we have from Megan here, we have 2 Caramoan pairs, Cochran and Dawn. I think that's pretty interesting. I think Dawn doesn't get a lot of credit for a lot of the moves that Cochran made. Like, yes, Cochran made them, but so did Dawn. And Dawn was definitely instrumental in Cochran's win. So I don't think she gets as much credit as she deserves for that. And then also Eddie and Reynolds. I think Eddie's a very underrated character. Kind of just like a goofy guy, like didn't really know what was going on all the time, and then at the same time he's paired up with Reynolds, who's like very, very, very strategy heavy, very, very sharp in terms of the game. So I thought that was an interesting pair as well. And who else do we have?
Yeah, no, I out of those.
Oh no, you go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say out of those 2, I do like Cochran and Dawn. I think if you see Eddie and Reynolds walk on the beach together, I think they're going to be a big target. Maybe not because they're big strategists and they haven't played for a while, but they are 2 bigger guys, so I think they will be targeted sooner. I do agree Dawn maybe was a bit more emotional than Cochran was and was a bit more unstable in some elements, but I do think that she was a critical element in their pairing. I don't think the Brenda connection that they were able to pull in Brenda and some other people would have happened without Dawn. I think Dawn, especially being a professional with people, especially young. Am I good, Dylan?
Yeah. You were just going in and out. So sorry everybody for the connectivity issues today. Not
Yeah, hopefully.
Long Island's not doing well with internet and power right now. So we're lucky to even
No,
have.
hopefully by next week we're all good to go. Really quickly, I was just saying I think that Cochran and Dawn were a critical duo with their. I mean, I think Cochran was a bit awkward at times, but I think Dawn helped pick up on that with her social game. Other honorable mentions that I had, I wanted to include Yao Man and Fiji gets a lot of flack as a season, and it's not a great one, but two of the biggest shining stars of Fiji came from Yao and Earl. I mean, they were great socially and strategically, and they made a fake idol, and they were able to get to the Final Four together, and I think that they are a great pair, and we all wanted to see Earl Cole come back for Winners at War, but due to his wife being pregnant, he wasn't able to make it out there, but I would love to see Earl back, and Yao Man was in the mix for Heroes versus Villains, so I would love to see Yao Man back for a third time. And then who else did I have on my list? A great pair that I didn't take for this draft, and I won't go too deep into them because I want to save them for a different draft, is Vesepia and Sean. I've mentioned a lot how I think Marquesa is a really underrated season, but I think their discussion might be better saved for a different draft down the line. But I do love Vesepia and Sean. And as for my last honorable mention, a bit more recent and a bit more different, but I think Lauren and Tommy was a really good pair in Islands of the Idols. I think that obviously Tommy was a very good social player that got the win, but Lauren Beck was a great player in her own right, especially blindsiding Molly at the second tribal council, showing big chops there, taking a huge swing at a power trio. And I think that if we get further away from IOI and they start to bring players back from that season, I think Lauren is a dominant threat.
Yeah, Tommy Lauren's a good one and one that crossed my mind as well. But yeah, I mean, look, there's just so many different duos you could choose from throughout all 40 seasons. But and I would love to hear, be sure to drop in the comment section more people that we forgot. We're going to wrap this up. I know we're having a lot of connectivity and power issues. I'm happy that we were even able to get this in tonight because of what's been going on the last few days. It was definitely a really good draft. And like I said, we do not have set plans for next week. So if you have any ideas for casting drafts, be sure to throw them in the comments, tweet at us, DM us. We will consider all ideas. If you don't already follow us on social media, you could follow us on Twitter at Soul Survivor Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at Soul Survivor Pod. You could subscribe to us if you don't already here on YouTube. Press that subscribe button. Press the like button on this YouTube video. It'll help us out a lot. Comment on the YouTube video. It'll help us out a lot. And in addition, we are keeping the No Context Probes account running strong. We got a lot of clips that we're going to post in the next few days that are pretty funny, and there's endless Probes content. So if you love Probes content, be sure to follow at No Context Probes as well. And that is all we got.
That's all we got for tonight. Like we said, hopefully what we got for you is better tech and better internet next time. That's what we're hoping for. But again, always appreciate the feedback. I got nothing else for you. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.